was a good thing you reminded, because I was knee deep in God knows what. And I looked at the clock, and I looked at the clock at like 7:45, and I said, "Oh, I got enough time to take a shower, to shave, get cleaned up, do what I got to do." Then I said, "Oh, I got to eat something." And the next thing I know, Baz is like, "Hey, we doing this thing?" Oh, Christ, we're late. But we made it live at exactly 9:00. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this week's edition of the Weekly Roundtable. I am Secretary of State of North Carolina, Frank Johnson, co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation. To my right is Michael Marshall, my co-founder and esteemed colleague of the Liberty First Foundation. We got Michael Vasquez, Dragon of the Southern Tier, with his newly coiffed head. And our resident lesbian, Jan Raines. How's everybody doing this evening?
I just got back from an event. So,
what event? What kind of event were you? Because I see you're dressed up for what looked like an auspicious occasion.
Well, it was, Larry Sharp, a friend of the channel, a friend of mine as well. Every year he goes to all 62 counties in New York. The Bronx was the last county for him. And so he was just which is down in my neighborhood. And so he had a small event with a couple of people down just in my neighborhood. And I, of course, went to cover that and then left there to come right here to speak with everybody about Iowa, to talk about Maine, to talk about 2023 and 2024. So this should be quite interesting.
Well, it's we noticed that you visited your barber.
Yeah. I changed my hair a little bit.
Changed?
It's not the first time I've cut my hair off.
I know, but change is moving your part from the left to the right. You just decided to vacate the whole thing. No, but you're one of those. You and Marshall are two of those rare guys that look good with the bald head. I shave my head. I look like a friggin' torpedo when it cross with a road map. Scars across my head that I can shake. Now I'm not going to ask Jane if she's ever shaved her head, but Jane, that's just not going to happen.
Well, it makes me look younger, so that's always good.
I shave my head every summer.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you usually do run a very short dew.
Long during the winter to keep my neck and ears warm, and nothing during the summer.
Yeah, that doesn't work for me. Somehow it never reaches, well, unless I have it braided, which I've done. I've done cornrows. I actually had them down to the middle of my back at one point in my life. Had just going straight down, which is 2 feet. So I had that for a while. Took forever to get done. I mean, it would take all day to do my hair. I don't know how women do it. So that's why I started cutting it off. Makes life easy.
Okay, so where do we want to start this week?
Well,
I mean, there's so much.
Well, it's the end of the year, and we got some blockbuster news. I mean, two of them. There's, of course, what's going on in overseas. The hostages, the American hostages held by Hamas being tortured and sexually abused as we speak, remain in the hands of Hamas. Yeah. Thank you, Joe Biden. Syria, actually Iran and Hezbollah attacked America, and Joe Biden finally responded to that in the most milquetoast manner I have ever seen. He is such a weak leader. We've been attacked on sea, in the Red Sea. Our allies have been attacked in the Red Sea by Iran through the Houthis, by Hezbollah, by Hamas. Our people are captured. Our people were killed. And he finally decided to attack in the smallest way possible. What a way to end the year. Oh, he's such a great, fearful leader, I tell you. No wonder Iran is quaking in their boots as they tell us they're going to step it up in 2024. That's terrifying to me. I mean,
I know he didn't address any of the servicemen that were all injured this week, but he did have time to come out and wish everybody a happy Kwanzaa.
Oh, yeah.
Which isn't real.
Well, and he gave Ukraine another $2.9 or $290 million.
well, somebody's got to pay the the retirement plans for all those people. I don't know. Does it seem like we even have a government anymore?
Yes, just a really bad one.
Yeah.
No, we don't have a
we
government.
still have
we
a
have
government.
authoritarians.
But it is no longer a government of the people.
Every time I turn the news on, I turn on the Twitter, I turn on the Instagram, I turn on whatever the hell it is. I just nothing is surprising me anymore. I'm to the point where I am just so completely shell shocked by everything that's been going on over the last few years that nothing is surprising me. I mean, here we have another Secretary of State decides that she's going to unilaterally decide to take Donald Trump off the ballot in Maine. The Republicans in that state immediately moved for an impeachment against her. This Colorado puts, they're deferring until they hear back from the Supreme Court. Mike DeWine, they passed a law over there in Ohio about banning the transgender, the reaffirming surgeries, for minors. And DeWine says, "Oh well, this is a very personal decision on behalf of the parents and the children, so I'm going to veto that."
No,
You got to be 21 to buy alcohol, 21 to get a tattoo. You can't get elective surgery of any kind until you're 18 over there. If you want to get a nose job in half of these states, you got to be 18 years old. But you want to cut your doingle off? Yeah, go ahead. Don't worry about it. It's perfectly fine.
and look at the kids they're targeting. These are kids that are in we're talking preteens. Their hormones haven't kicked in yet, and they never will because of these surgeries, because of what's happened to them. And no one, and again, no one has ever considered, what if you are wrong? Even 1% of the time, you are dooming someone for the rest of their lives. This is not reversible because of the damage it does.
Well,
We've talked on this show before, about how your mind and your thought processes don't really mature until after you're 25. Prior to the age of 25, your thinking is primarily ruled by your amygdala, which is an emotion-based thinking process. It's not designed for long-term repercussions. That's why you see a lot of kids doing very stupid stunts, like eating Tide Pods.
That happens.
Because they don't think about the long-term repercussions. They think of the here and now. And a lot of this that is going on with a lot of these kids is emotional. There is no long-term thoughts. And a lot of their thinking is, well, if I could just be such and such, then my life's going to be 1,000 times better.
Call it what it is, Mike. It's the fad. It is popular. This is
It is a fad.
Do. And we have movies.
But also, we're all older here. So it may be a little hard for us to think back to our teenage years. But if you think back to your teenage years, I will guarantee that a majority of us would probably say, hey, if I could change this or that about my life, it would make my life better.
Sort of, yeah.
That's true, but at the same time, we had parents that kept us in check. Your parents don't keep the kids in check anymore.
We did. And, well, I'm going to go into this a little bit more here in just a little bit. But right now, parents are being prevented from being able to. Okay. Case in point. Okay. This came out today. State of Iowa. Okay. This is out by the Des Moines Register. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. Okay. A federal judge literally just blocked a law in the state of Iowa that would ban certain books from being allowed in K through 6 schools. Okay. Elementary schools. Okay. Kindergarten, you're talking 5 years old. 6th grade, you're talking 11.
Look at the first paragraph. That first paragraph is incredibly important.
So, an Iowa law requiring schools to remove books depicting sex acts and prohibiting instruction about gender identity or sexual orientation in kindergarten through 6th grades cannot be enforced while legal challenge continues. A federal judge ruled on Friday. Okay, so that was today. Sex acts.
Playboy, Penthouse, Hustler is now going to be shown to your, or rather, could be shown by a kindergarten teacher to your children. Or it could be Playgirl. It could be the gay version, the whatever version, any sexual proclivity in America and the world can now be on display for your kids, giving them this in detail imagery and telling them, oh, by the way, there's minor attracted people. That's normal. Cutting off body parts. That's normal. Here's all the things that you can normally do. We're telling you today, and by the way, throughout your entire education, we're going to tell you, this is your option. What, you're not comfortable with your life? Maybe you want to cut off your body parts. Maybe you want to become something else, not just in your imagination, but you want to chop it. Just like in this movie, maybe you'll be one of the people in this magazine that's famous. Do you see the danger? Do people see the danger in this?
Okay. So it goes on in this article a little further down. It's the same, quit jumping on me because the damn ad's loading. Instructor on gender identity and sexual orientation has no place in kindergarten through 6th grade classrooms, Reynolds says. And there should be no question that books containing sexually explicit content, as clearly defined in Iowa law, do not belong in the school library for children. I completely agree with that. That was Governor Reynolds that made that statement.
This is just so wrong. And I understand freedom of speech, but freedom of speech is an adult issue, 18 and above. And for those who are under, we're supposed to protect them appropriate to their ages, to introduce them to ideas when they can handle it. Not when the government mandates it, but when a parent says, my child is capable of dealing with this and the consequences of it. This is insane. This is sick.
Well, I think this all plays a hand in their population control too, because a study came out, a report came out today that there are more illegals in our country than American births happening at this moment today.
Yeah, the birth rate has gone down.
With all these gender reassignment surgeries, you got to think about what that's doing to our population too.
Well, we know the United States, along with most of the first world nations that have been adopting a more progressive ideology, it's interesting. The more progressive they are, the slower the birth rate has become. We have actually just hit unsustainability. We cannot maintain the population of the United States at the birth rate that we have right now. Same thing for the United Kingdom.
I think it's 2.4 children births per family average.
We're at about 1.8 to 1.6, I believe.
Yeah,
England
you're
is 1.2.
you can't maintain the population. Your population will start declining.
All
I
part of
think
the
Richard Dow
plan.
says it's 1.6 for the United States currently. I thought it was 1.8, but okay, it's 1.6. We dropped even lower than I was aware of.
Okay, so I mean it's this whole thing right now.
I just don't understand where the hell all this power came from. For this counterculture type of group, this radical ideology to have so much power and authority that they can seemingly control the media, entertainment, Congress, the Senate, the judiciary.
Well,
It's where did this stranglehold that they have seem to come from? Because 25 years ago, 30 years ago, these people would have been chased out of town, put on a barge, and sent to go live on some island someplace far away from the rest of decent civilization. Where did this come from? And where the hell is the sense of morality of the normal everyday citizen that we just seem to let this shit happen?
Easy answer. It came from the colleges, the college graduates from Harvard, from Cornell University, Binghamton University, these individuals who believe that genocide is justifiable as long as it's for the correct political ideology, who believe in feelings over facts. Those colleges have indoctrinated these kids. Those kids graduate and they go into entertainment and news media and politics.
All right,
And
but
that's it.
yeah, but there are 100 other things that we have been riled up about in the last 50 years. All right, there's been 100 other things. None of the things that we have as a society have had to come to deal with has been so off the deep end as this bullshit that we're seeing with this gender crap. Nothing has been this extreme.
Because, well, there have been, but the key is look at what's happened in our colleges. They have been continuously moving further and further left. And at the same time, they have been hitting critical mass in especially our news media, which has been critical in how they put out. And we've also had at the same time changes in our technology, and where we have the big tech companies who are selectively allowing bottlenecking what people have access to. Oh, you're speaking about, whereas in the past, you would have voices that would speak up and say, I don't agree with that. Those voices are, let's call, suppressed by the social media so that you don't see it. Very few people get to see it or hear about it. And it's easy to label those people at that point and say, see, you're all by yourself. You're the outsider. You're the strange one. You're just an ist and a phobe, and therefore you're silenced. And that helps to cow any other voice and make it seem like, well, everyone agrees with this.
All right. Outside of this, let's just look at this whole gender thing right here. What is more? What if you could be like, all right, if you're a writer of science fiction, what scenario could you come up with right now in your brain that is more outrageous than all of a sudden seemingly being told that 20% of the people in this country are in the wrong body and need to have gender reassignment surgery? What is more radical? What could you come up with that's more radical than that?
Transhumanism. You're not a human being. You're an animal. Or
I know. Well, all right, that still is something that's even somewhat laughable, even among certain things. But I've seen some of this crap too. I've seen some of it too. But this has got to be about the most radical thing that you could possibly do. The most radical thing that you could possibly come up with. Isn't it amazing how it all coincides at the exact same time that all of these people that seek to have this authority now have the ability to have it? How did all of this coalesce into the worst possible scenario all at the same time? How did we
To
lose?
start with,
We lost
honestly,
humanity. Humanity is done. We are finished as a species.
to start
We're
with,
done.
everybody got afraid of being labeled an anti this, anti that, anti this, anti that.
Yeah, everyone.
Okay, that's what a lot of it. Okay. If you say anything against LGBTQIA, you are a whatever phobe.
Yeah.
Okay, when that isn't the case. And what a lot of us talk about is the indoctrination of our children. But yet, whenever we say that and talk about that and try to have real discussions on that, we are labeled that we are bigoted against anybody of that type of persuasion.
Here's the thing. Why is it bigoted or somehow an ist or a phobe to say there's no need, no reason why a 5 or 6 year old child needs to be presented pornography in a classroom? Why is that? How is that so outside the norm? That's normal almost anywhere in the world. This isn't, but now we're being told, no, but you've gone too far. How can I I'm protecting a child from pornography. Literally, this could be pornography. They don't need it. There's no that's not part of learning the ABCs. It's not part of learning how to do math, to be able to read, comprehension. It has nothing to do with any of that. They're not even close to puberty. It has nothing to do with that. There is no justification. And yet we are told, oh, no, but you're the bad guy. Even though there's no justification for it, you're the bad guy for mentioning this. In other words, it doesn't go to your program. And to address your question, Frank, why would they want to? Our populations are depleting. Well, that happens to go along with. Think about it for a second, folks. The eco fanatics. What is the number one cause of greenhouse gases?
You're breathing.
In the world? Breathing. Therefore, the only thing that will effectively be able to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases is a depopulation of the world. Because
well, they should all start with themselves. That's the first thing they should do.
No, it should never be them. They're the ones who are leading us. They're the thinkers. They have to stay. They have to be around to properly.
No, they're all Ingrid. They're all Ingrid Newkirk. That's who they are. They're all Ingrid Newkirk. Preach whatever they want to preach, but it can't affect them because their voice needs to be heard. Because they're the champion of the cause. They can't sacrifice themselves. We've all known people, and some of us sadly have experience with having people in our lives that have taken their own lives. All right, and there are a lot, and this is something that's just coming to me. So I just bear with me for a minute because this is a weird road I want to take you on, but. We all know that there's people that have been, suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
Scientists, psychologists, all of these people that study this, they seem to be able to find markers in people in psychological traits as to who's more prone to be someone who would want to commit suicide. And there are a lot of treatments out there for depression and anxiety and stuff that people can help people get through this and everything. My father used to say when it came to suicide, because he had to talk a lot of people down off a lot of ledges, that suicide is a permanent solution for what is usually a very temporary problem.
Yes.
And now me, I lost my brother-in-law who to me was one of the greatest men to ever walk the face of the earth. His depression got the best of him, and he lost his life. I've had other people in my life that have, I've lost to suicide. And there's always been that certain something in it, and it's usually hovers around depression and not being able to deal with circumstances in your life. You don't know how to, you feel like there's no way out. It's hard to deal with things. You don't know who you can talk to, don't know who you can turn to. And even the people you talk to, can you trust them? Are they looking out for you? There's so much that goes on in the mind of somebody who deals with depression. And they wind up, going and doing that. And I was watching earlier today, one of these, there was a conflict at an airport where some airport worker had misgendered some guy dressed as a woman. And he was reading the guy's name on the ticket because the guy's identification still had his given name on it, but now he's dressed up as somebody else and he's going by somebody else. And the guy's trying to say, listen, I'm not trying to be combative with you, but this is the policy. The person who buys the ticket has to be the person who flies on the plane. You have to have certain rules and everything. And the phrase, "you're dead naming me," kept coming up. You're dead naming me. When somebody goes through these things and they're no longer Bruce, but they're Caitlyn. Well, if you call Caitlyn Bruce, you're dead naming Caitlyn Jenner. You're dead naming them. I want to know how many things in common that suicidal people have with these people that go changing their gender. Because what they're basically doing is taking the person that they were born as, that they can't deal with. There's something in that person's life that they don't like at all, that they are going to take the most extreme form of change they possibly can, shy of killing themselves, and now becoming something completely different, to the point where they don't even identify the person that they were born as ever being alive. That person is dead now. Their persona is dead. Their personality is dead. Their name is dead. Everything about them is dead except the body that's walking around with new genitalia on it. So if we can argue that people that have suicidal tendencies have got mental illness that can be, in many cases, successfully treated, why aren't we looking at this transgenderism thing as another form of depression that needs to be treated? Because this is obviously some sort of mental illness.
They used to, and now that is now it's considered a norm. Previously, it was considered a disorder. There was a big movement against that, along tagging on the lines of the LGB, saying that no, this is a norm, just like LGB is a norm, that it was phobic and a means to try and silence a population. And then it was, so the medical approach was changed, considering that it was normalized, and very few people, whereas there were more people who were previously diagnosed with a mental disorder, they are now considered normal, and they instead get hormones and surgeries. Again, this goes to my statement. We have never considered, what if you're wrong? What happens to all those people who actually have either they're following a fad or they have a mental disorder, and they got swept up in this, and they're now part of it? Because we've seen an explosion. The number historically of people who are trans in the United States was about 0.5% of the population.
Now it's up to like 2.
Now it's about 2 to 3%. With polling we've seen in the youth of today, in all the polls, that's trending as high as I've seen as high as 12%. This is an enormous, and we have never considered how much of that is because of the emphasis by social media, by movies, entertainment, to say that this is not only normal, but it is essential. That we have seen how many times where Miss USA, the various states, Miss Universe, has gone to an individual not because of the qualities they have, their inherent, rather their abilities or their qualifications, but rather because they adopted this now normalized mode, whether or not it is something that is worthwhile.
Well, Sports Illustrated swimsuit calendar,
Yet another
or
example.
swimsuit issue.
And that's the problem. There's, for those, and by the way, we have in the description, in the chat, if you are considering doing harm to yourself or others, please reach out. Reach out to the suicide hotline. Reach out to your friends and family. Speak to someone. Don't just suffer in silence. Don't just let it dwell. Reach out to someone. But so while we're talking about this, I want you to remember, I'm not blaming anyone for this. I'm trying to understand that in our in the push, the progressive ideology, which is the smaller the group, the more positive the group, no matter what the ideology is, and the more they have to be raised up on the scale of equity, the more they have to be promoted, even if that's not necessarily to the benefit of those individuals or society as a whole. They're not considering consequences to this. That's the biggest problem.
Well, it goes. I'm looking at it and I say, but we've had sex change surgery since the 1950s,
Yeah,
the 1960s, something like that. They were first starting around, with this kind of stuff. But science and society, even though that was looked at as ridiculous and extreme and stupid and all the rest, it was carnival fare. It was carnival fare. That's how ridiculous it was. They put science behind it, and the science said, listen, you're still a man, but now you look like a woman, or you're still a woman, now you look like a man, and you're not going to change that. That's never going to change. And now it's not, you don't even have to have the assignment surgery for them to now insist that the genetics have mysteriously changed. A woman is a man is a woman. But it's now they believe, they honestly believe that Justin Trudeau just took taxpayer money to install tampon machines in the men's bathrooms in every government building in Canada. We've got the same crap going on over here when men can give birth. No, men can't give birth. Women can give birth.
Yes, and that's genetically absolutely true.
They believe it's no longer a matter of semantics to them. This is a matter of
why they're trying to change terminology from women, whenever you're talking about birth, to birthing persons.
Not trying, Mike. They did change the definitions. They changed the definition. What is a man? What is a woman? What is a mother? They've changed that, but let's bring it in context to Iowa again, and the book banning we've seen there. And what you're seeing is this is how indoctrination. People go, there's no indoctrination, Mike. You've just misunderstood. You don't get it. Well, okay, so you're telling me that they're starting off with kids in kindergarten to show them imagery and to tell them this is normal. Here's normal, and they add to the imagery not just a heterosexual relationship, and now they're going to emphasize, again, because this is the minority, so they have to emphasize, according to equity, the non-traditional, non-heterosexual relationships and sexual acts. And they're going to be telling these kids from kindergarten, this is normal. This is normal. You may feel like this too. Do you feel like this? Are you sure if you feel like this? Because this is normal. And we have to talk about this, and you should think it's normal. And they're going to go through all of their elementary school. They're going to go through junior high school, and into college, being told continuously, this is normal. Maybe it's you. Are you sure it's you? Maybe kind of, you could be you. This is how they indoctrinate, because it becomes part of the cycle of thought, even though it may be very confusing, even though it doesn't, especially as kids are getting their hormones, they're not sure about their life. They're being confronted with the more and more of life into their childhood. So they're trying to deal with concepts like the future that they don't understand, and consequences they can't envision. There is no 15-year-old that understands or has any concept of being 45. They can't envision it.
They don't.
And so this is how you indoctrinate, because you have now taken this very small group of people, this very small, isolated population, and you have expanded it. And so everyone's competing. And why are they competing? Because look at the trend, look at the fad. You want to be a model? Be trans. You want to be a movie star? Be trans. You want to be on the top sci-fi program of the last 60 years, Doctor Who? Be trans. Doesn't matter if you're a good actor or not. In fact, maybe if you're a person of color, that'll make it even easier for you to be skyrocketed, regardless of
big bear sponsorship. Be trans.
Yeah, there is no meritocracy to this. This is, you're in the top of the equity chart of that ladder, so you're going to be skyrocketed no matter what. DEI. This is going to be promoting you all the way through your life until it isn't, until you have to deal with the consequences of it. And then what happens?
Well, speaking of that, that Mulvaney character,
Warren Mulvaney.
Yeah, that's exactly what they are, is a character. It's coming out more and more that basically all his stunts are an act. It's nothing more than an act.
Well, it's been effective. How rich did he get?
It is. Okay, but it's like I said, it's not, he did it as a means of drawing attention to himself. That is it.
Now, let's hold up for a second. Jen, you are non-traditional in your preferences. Let's put it that way. Because I'm not trying to gaslight you. I'm not trying to.
She's gay.
I know she's gay.
You can say it.
I know she's a lesbian.
I'm not gay. I'm a lesbian. There's a big difference.
That's why I
What's
said.
the difference?
No,
gay is male, lesbian is female.
Exactly.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes, that's why it's LGB.
You see, that's
lesbian, gay, bi.
Yeah, but a lesbian is a gay woman.
No.
Well, gay happens to mean
no
happy,
gay women.
No.
Remember, gay means happy.
No,
and so, you know.
Yeah, but there's no gay women. So my sister's not gay.
No. We have our own identity. When the word gay came out, it was to describe men.
Right.
Then they put the women into that same category. We wanted our own category because we are not men.
All right, but what defines a gay man? What is the definition of a gay man? A man who's attracted to other men, correct?
Yes.
That's what being gay is. So wouldn't a woman who's attracted to other women exhibit
a man being attracted to another man?
Oh, stop your semantics. God damn it.
Anyway. And so my point is, Jen, in hearing this, when we're talking about this, and I've talked to several people who are trans about this and my concern about this, I can tell you that in the conversations I've had within the trans community, limited as that is, they see my point and they recognize and they agree there is a consequence, a negative coming down the road from this because of the way it's being presented, which is unfair to them. But Jen, you're more in touch with this than I am. Am I missing something here? Are we off? Are we just being some kind of I don't know,
Okay.
right
Well,
wing
here's
crazy.
my thing. I was waiting to get my say in here because I do represent the community, not as a whole, but because they've gone way too left. To answer Frank's question first, I don't think you can look at when somebody transitions the same as a suicide. You can look at it as a death because that's what it is. They are mourning the person they once were, and they've been birthed into the person they are now. So I understand how you can compare it to that. But again, it's more like mourning the death of the person. When I was heavily involved with the community, most of the people who became trans, it fit them. I mean that's all you can say. Yes, I don't care how long we're going to be out there. They will always say that if you're not heterosexual, you have a mental disorder. I don't agree with it. Do I have mental disorders? Yes, I do, but that's not one of them for me. I'm attracted to women. The same way you're attracted to women. So how am I wrong? That's the best way that I've always been able to put that. When I've had guys ask me why I'm gay, and I look at them and I say, why are you attracted to a woman? We'll go down your list. Okay, well, that's why I'm attracted to a woman. How is that a mental disease? I don't look at a male that way. But getting back to the trans issue, a lot of the people that I know that changed their bodies back then, again, it fit them. I had no issues with it. Today I have an issue with it because most of the people who have transitioned in the last 10 years, over 80% of them, now that they're 10 years older, regret it. And they tell you that when they went in for therapy, because you have so many appointments, you have to go talk to a psychologist, a therapy, whatever therapist it is. You have so many appointments that you have to go in and talk to this person about why you want to change your gender. Then you're supposed to make, then you're supposed to go live your life for an X amount of time as that new gender before you have a sex change.
Those were the old rules.
They don't do that anymore. You want a sex
that.
change, you get the sex change.
Yeah, they changed that for adults and they did that not only for the adults, but they did that so they could access those children, those who are teenagers and even younger, to be able to have the same surgeries and
exactly. And that's one of the biggest areas that they've gotten away from that has blown this so out of proportion today. Again, there are people who were 16 and 17 years old who went to therapy and they went through their stuff and they had their gender change. And now 10 years later, they say, you know what? I regret it because that's not what was at the root of why I was feeling this way. And the therapist never asked me about that. They just went with all the gender ideology questions. They didn't ask, well, how about this or how about that, where they did 20, 30 years ago.
Well, it's because they already have an answer. And it's just like when many people used to go to counseling to have conversations, not to get prescribed medications. And now we see the answer to everything is, well, let me give you a pill.
Yeah,
There
well,
may be
that's the
other
first
answers.
thing. Whenever you get diagnosed for any type of mental disorder, the first thing they do is throw pills at it.
Exactly.
They don't try to come up with what's the root cause of what you're going through. Okay. Depression, even with depression, and they say depression is a chemical imbalance in your brain. They do no testing to figure out what type of chemical imbalance you have.
Well,
Okay. They just throw some pills at it. And if those don't work, then they throw other pills at it.
And I suffer from depression, manic depressive. I'm a manic depressant. I suffer from anxiety. I suffer from PTSD. I don't go to a counselor and I don't take meds.
Now, I do believe that a good majority of depression could probably be handled through therapy sessions. Okay. A lot of PTSD could be handled through therapy sessions and not throwing pills at it. Because one of the major side effects of a lot of these medications that are supposed to, quote unquote, treat these issues are suicide. It's okay. If they prescribe the wrong ones, there is a dramatic increase in suicides.
well, think about this, Mike. Guys, the answer is this is part of the progressive mantra that we're seeing going into 2024, and this will affect kids in every grade. It's not just an Iowa issue. The answer is they want you to live with whatever's going on. They want you to live in poverty. They want you to live in the wrong body. They want you to live feeling that you're oppressed, that you are without any power, that you must obey, that you're a serf and a peon. You have to live with that. They want you to feel good about being in that state. Look at every one of the socialist progressive policies. It's not about resolving the underlying issue. Their answer to crime, in particular, we talk about guns all the time. Gun control. The answer to gun control is not to deal with the underlying cause, which there could be at least 38, according to 538. If you look at it, there are at least 38 different reasons why there are mass shootings. At least. And we don't deal with any of those core issues. We deal with the simplest answer, which is ineffective and has never worked, which is, okay, law-abiding citizens just don't get to have guns. That hasn't solved anything. It's never worked. Over half a century, that policy has failed consistently, yet they continue to do it. Why? Live with it, feel good about the non-solution, and let's move on. Same thing with, okay, you have a issue mentally, you're depressed, whatever the issue may be. Here's a pill. Live with it, not let's deal with the underlying issue. We can go into every single aspect of our lives and society that the progressives are pushing is always live with it, feel good, not fix the problem. They never deal with that because the core issue is what keeps them in power and keeps them well fed.
Well,
Does
it's
anyone
not just
disagree
them,
with me on that?
it's the pharmaceutical companies and everything else.
Well,
I mean,
that's
they're
another
trying to,
big
they're
part of
trying
it
to-
is the pharmaceutical companies. Okay. And I know that these pharmaceutical companies pay bounties, bonuses, whatever, to doctors to prescribe their meds. Okay.
Yeah.
That came out with the jabs.
Yeah. But that was,
Okay.
where did that come from? That came from the government pushing that. The government
No, part of it was
enabled.
from the government. Part of it was from Pfizer.
No, Pfizer did it because the government enabled them to do it. When Pfizer said, when Pfizer said, the only way we'll give you this medication is if you absolve us from any liability whatsoever and give us a contract. And the government said, absolutely, no problem. You're
And
absolved.
Pfizer was also paying doctors up to $100 a dose for every person they got vaccinated.
Right. But they did that after the government gave them the go ahead. The government gave them the green light. The core issue in that, in a large part, was the government. Pfizer never said this was ready for the public or that it was good for the public. The government did. The government said, we're going to do this and you're going to be mandated for it. And they said, well, if you're going to do that, we're going to get rich.
Yeah.
And so I have a problem with how the pharmaceutical companies do some of these things. But the root problem is it goes back to the government with its policies that said, no, this will make people feel good about whatever the problem is. Do it. Push it, give it to them now. We'll deal with the consequence later. And when people, as long as our nation doesn't address the core issues, these problems are only going to fester and get worse. That's my opinion on that. Not everyone agrees with me, but that's where I see the biggest problem with that is.
They don't want a healthy society.
Yeah, and that's why Iowa and many other states, especially the further left-leaning they are, the more we tend to see, oh yeah, we want to get to your kids and we want to push this message. Look at the libs of TikTok talking about this. They say it publicly. This isn't something we're making up. They have said this publicly. They want to change the way your kids think and believe, regardless of the wishes of the parent, because they believe they're right and they feel like they have the power to do so. So they're going to do it.
Well,
Regardless
if
of the
you
consequence.
notice, this exploded even more after Biden got into office and said that your children aren't your children; they're our children.
Part of his move on DEI. And we've heard this, but it's been coming. I mean, you heard Hillary how many years ago? 2016. It takes a village to raise a kid. No, it really doesn't. It takes two parents.
Well, when we were growing up, it did take a village to raise a kid because you go out and do something and nobody's around and you get home and your parents are going, so I heard this today. But it was the way that they deem it takes a village.
The village didn't raise the children. The village
grew up in.
The village didn't raise the child. The village informed on the child. The parents still raised the child.
Exactly. But I'm saying they're using that word totally different than the way we were raised with that word. Again, they've changed the meaning of it, which is what the left does all the time. If they don't like a word, they're going to change the meaning of it.
They constantly revision everything. They revision history. What's the latest thing now with Nikki Haley? And they're talking about the Civil War. Well, the Civil War it was obviously about racism. It was about slavery and we had to get rid of it. No, it wasn't. No, it never was. But yet you see why. This is one of their key goals because it's part of the entire race.
I'm going to come back on that. Okay. Slavery was a component of the Civil War.
It was
not 2 years after the Civil War started.
Yeah, it was.
Okay. And that is actually one of the reasons that South Carolina listed when it withdrew from the United States, when it seceded, was the North being anti-slave.
Yeah, but that wasn't the primary. Any historian.
The primary cause was economics.
Yeah.
Okay, it was economics and it was over states' rights.
But I think the biggest point to be made is slavery didn't come into the Civil War until halfway through the Civil War.
Well, it's even before that. A week before the Emancipation Proclamation. Everyone forgets this when they want to. When we hear this coming from the left, because it disrupts their revisioning of the past. They're romanticized. And trust me, when they talk about slavery, it's romanticized to emphasize their outlook, their CRT, critical race theory view of the present. They forget a week before the Emancipation Proclamation, Lincoln wrote an editorial in the New York Times of the day, making it very clear that if he could keep slavery and keep the Union, keep the United States together, he would do it. He wanted, yes, he was an abolitionist. Yes, he wanted to free the slaves. But if he could keep the United States united, he'd have kept slavery. It
He
wasn't
also,
the primary issue.
here's another thing. Lincoln didn't think he had the authority. He didn't think the federal government had the authority to abolish slavery. He took that authority when the South succeeded. That's why abolition was only in the southern states and not the northern states. Because he could do it as commander in chief
Well,
over the territories that they occupied in the South, because the South was at that time classified as a separate country.
well, and what people don't realize too is before that, even Lincoln wanted to send every black person back to Africa.
Yeah, that was a common theme at the time. A lot of, matter of fact, a lot of movements. Marcus Garvey was another one, more recently, where they were like, let's go back to Africa. In fact, the nation of Liberia is based on go back to Africa, which was what some people thought. And that's fantastic. I don't mind that. But I am very upset about this revisionist view and attacking individuals for the historical fact that slavery was actually about the fifth most important thing in the Civil War. And it's important to put it back in context, because when we blow up the context, it's kind of the same thing that we're seeing with the trend about what's the problem with banning books. Well, we equate that to 1930. You notice progressives always equate things they don't like with moments in history in the past that have no context, no connection to the current. Oh,
Right.
You talk about slavery, we talk about 1865. What about the modern day slavery? How does that have context to today? What about
Or they
what-
talk about it in 1619.
Exactly. Well, they don't look at when we talk about book banning, they go to, well, of course, it's got to be World War II. No. What about what's that got to do with what's happening today? There's a big difference between protecting kids from inappropriate materials before they're capable of understanding or conceiving them than what theirs did in the 1930s in Germany. Big, massive differences, but yet they're both propaganda. That's what we're seeing. This is what's so damaging. This is what we're going into in 2024. This environment that says, if you oppose the approved message, you are the bad guy. And they are willing to demonize more than half this nation. They're willing to demonize their own people. How many times do they you see someone on the left get thrown under a bus? Ibram Kendi recently got thrown under a bus because he wasn't progressive enough, because you can never be progressive enough. Because progressivism is always dividing it to smaller and smaller groups, and there's always someone above you that is more marginalized, that is a smaller group, that has to be emphasized and put ahead of you arbitrarily. Because no one votes on these lists. No one ever voted and said, okay, here's the category. Here's the marginalization. No one votes on that. You're just told this is the answer today. Used to be being black, then it became black women. Now it's trans. Next year it'll be, the next wave will be something else. Maybe it's fat
There's
people, short
always
people.
going to be a marginalized group.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on a little bit. So Maine this week took President Trump off their ballots. The Secretary of State said that she was taking Donald Trump off of the ballot. And her claim is that Maine law requires her to do so.
Lie.
Okay. Well, that's it exactly. Okay. So the headline reads, Maine law required that I act to disqualify, Secretary of State says. Barring former President Donald Trump from the primary ballot was a hard but necessary call, Sheena Bellows said in an interview.
She's
Before
predicating
she
this.
decided to bar former President Donald J. Trump from Maine's primary ballot, Sheena Bellows, the Secretary of State, was knowing for court and controversy, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And she said that her decision was that Mr. Trump's incitement of the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol made it necessary to exclude him from the ballot next year.
Full stop. Full stop. She just invalidated her entire argument, and she exposed her partisan ideology, and this is not law. She said Trump's action is, what was it there? It's necessary because of his incitement. He's never been convicted of that. That's not even a charge against him. His actions on January 6th, his insurrection, there is no crime, and he is being punished because of an accusation. What's the other thing that we see from progressives?
Well,
Accusation equals guilt. There is no guilt here. Therefore, you cannot punish him for an action he has never been convicted of, not
Okay.
the United States.
let's go into Snopes has done a fact check on this.
Oh,
And we know how we love Snopes around here.
of course, they're going to
Okay.
agree.
Trump doesn't need a criminal conviction for ballot removal, according to research on the 14th Amendment.
Lie. Yes, he does.
Okay. So, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution expressly specifies that a criminal conviction for insurrection is needed to disqualify a candidate from state or federal office. Okay, and they're giving us a false rating.
Well, as I
Okay,
said
and-
last week, they're doing it in the name of impeachment.
No, hold on a
That's
second.
not a conviction.
I
That's a trial.
understand that, and we
Oh.
know that, but that's what they're doing. That's what they're running with. The fact that he was impeached. That's all you hear. Well, he was impeached for insurrection, so
Which
he's
is it?
guilty.
Which is it? And that's them counting the fact that the public, because of a lack of civics courses, don't understand what impeachment means. That's a trial. And he was absolved. He was vindicated from that trial that said not guilty. Therefore, no crime. Therefore, this is accusation equals guilt. Same thing that we see with Me Too and many other aspects of progressive ideology. Because someone doesn't like you, because they don't like you owning a gun, red flag law. Because they don't like the way you talk to that female, Me Too. They don't like this guy on the ballot because they might lose. Now he's got to be removed, 14th Amendment. None of this is legal, constitutional, and it is destroying our country. We're becoming Angola. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so on August 1st, Trump was indicted on 4 felony conspiracy counts in special counsel Jack Smith's 2020 election interference case. Statement delivered by Smith called the Capitol riot of January 6, 2021, an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. As described in the indictment, it was fueled by lies by a defendant targeted at obstructing a bedrock function of the U.S. government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election. On the 19th, the Colorado Supreme Court declared Trump would be removed from the state's ballot, citing a clause in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. 9 days later, Maine's Democratic Secretary of State removed Trump from the state, citing the same clause. So we've gone through this several times, okay? No person being senator or representative of Congress or elector of president or vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who have previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in an insurrection or rebellion against same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof, but Congress may, by vote 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Okay. It does not explicitly say that you must be found guilty, but it does say that it needs to be proven that you did actually engage in insurrection. That's where due process comes involved.
Well, and I
If
think
you read the first section of Article 4 or of the 14th Amendment, we will find that no rights may be removed from anyone without due process.
Well, and
Which
I think
again-
one of the things that they like to leave out is how many times in his speech did he say, "Go peacefully"?
Well, they edit that out. They edit out anything that shows, just like with January 6th, how many thousands of hours of video did they edit out that shows police officers walking side by side, escorting many of the individuals through the halls of Congress, opening the doors, inviting people in. They edit that out. It doesn't hit their message. Notice they edit out what happened this week. Michigan, after Colorado said, the Colorado Supreme Court said, no, it's 14th Amendment. We really, really have made the decision. We really feel that Trump was insurrectionist. Michigan turned around and said, no, he's not. He wasn't charged with that. He's not convicted of that. That isn't accurate, and he's on the ballot. Oh, they leave out that Michigan, a blue state, said, nope, that's not correct. That is incorrect view of the law. And they said, oh, well, we won't talk about that. We'll talk about Colorado and Maine. We won't talk about the states that have also looked at this, because there have been several before Colorado and since that said, no, that's wrong. This is all about feelings. And how dare you question their feelings?
Well, like I said, okay, Section 1, Amendment 14, Section 1, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which the president is subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws.
And this is what's happening.
Okay. So Trump has not, due process in Trump's indictment has not been satisfied yet. Due process means that you are able to refute any charges against you. Now, regardless of whether Trump was indicted, impeached, or whatever, until there is an actual trial and due process is served, he is not guilty of it.
More important than not guilty.
It cannot be said that he is an insurrectionist because due process has not been served.
Well, let's emphasize something. According to our legal system, it must be said that he is innocent. It must be said. It is a requirement that he must be innocent because he hasn't been proven guilty. And everyone in America is innocent from the moment they're born until the moment they are convicted. To call him an insurrectionist is a severe violation of the principles of everything this country has been built on.
Now, while there may be evidence that Trump may or may not have incited the actions that occurred on January 6th, it doesn't matter because he has not been able to answer to the allegations that have been presented against him. Now, if we want to go into this a little further, yes, he was impeached for quote unquote insurrectionist activity after he was president because of the events on January 6th. However, the Senate, which is the trial part of the impeachment process, voted that he was not guilty of it.
Vindication.
Okay. He
He's-
may have been indicted or impeached by the House, but the Senate did not find the evidence enough to grant a conviction for that impeachment.
the public
It's
have
just
to,
like with the indictment. He has been charged with it. And he has not been charged with insurrection. He's not been charged with rebellion. He has been charged with basically instigating a riot.
you know, I find it interesting. If I went around and I said that Alec Baldwin is a murderer because of what he did on the movie set, I think the movie was Rust, is it's called, or something like that.
Rust.
Yeah. So if I said he's a murderer because he shot a woman, and I said, and because he's been charged, therefore he's a murderer, you will hear everyone on the left and most Americans say, Mike, that you can't call him a murderer because he hasn't been convicted. You can't claim that. You can say you may think that, but you can't say that's a fact. But yet, in this is the exact same circumstance, and I'm using that as a very explicit example. You can't call Alec Baldwin a murderer without taking in penalties, legal penalties. You could be sued for saying that because that's defamation. It's a crime because he hasn't been tried and he hasn't been convicted. And yet we're doing under the same circumstances. Trump, who was impeached, tried, and exonerated, found not guilty, is yet still being demonized and punished. We would never allow this to happen in any other circumstance, especially for someone on the left. And yet we are seeing state after state do this. Mind you, this isn't going to change the ballot. Maine was going to go, well, presumably, historically, they were going to be Democrats anyway. They're voting Democrat anyway. Same thing with
Maine is
Colorado.
a state where they actually split their electoral votes. Okay, and last election it was 2 for Trump and 3 for Biden.
Yeah, and I would expect it to be pretty much the same. In fact, I think the fear is coming from the left that they're afraid they may actually lose a lot of these states, even the blue states, because 60% of Democrats don't want Biden or Kamala Harris. They have never wanted them because the majority of Americans have continuously and significantly found the policies of the Biden-Harris administration and the progressive ideology to be a failure. It is making people's lives worse, not better.
Now, I want to
Quick question, Marshall. They had 5 electors up in Maine. 3 went Biden, 2 went Trump. Now, if I'm not mistaken, during the last debacle with the election, they were told there was a lot of talk about trying to convince electors to not cast their vote with what the popular vote was.
Right.
Electors can put whoever they want, can actually name somebody who didn't win that vote.
Technically, yes. They do not have to. They do not have to go by.
Right.
Traditionally, they do, but the electors do not have to go by what the populace of the state votes for.
Right. Now, the Secretary of State in each one of the states is the one that has to validate
validate the votes, and therefore
they say certify. They have to certify
Mhm.
that's what the electors chose. So the Secretary of State has to poll the electors in that state and say,
Mhm.
is it true that X amount of you voted for
Actually,
this?
no. What happens is the Secretary of State collects them and then forwards them to the House,
All right. So, but what I'm
or
saying is,
actually the Senate.
but what I'm saying is, what I'm trying to get that, even if they manage to take Trump off a ballot, right? And say you have a majority of the people, that you're still not going to be able to take a party off the ballot. You're just going to wind up having the name blank for that, the person who represents the party.
Well, if you're going by
That's
the
not true either.
if you're going by the Colorado decision, Trump can't beat, because the question is, well, you could write in anyone or just vote Republican. No, according to Colorado, they have the right to invalidate even a write-in choice, which I call voter nullification. And any state that allows this is voter nullification. You have the right to vote for anyone you want, but they're trying to assert
Regardless of
the
whether
right.
they appear on the ballot or not.
They don't even have to be a human being. You have the right to write in anything you want. Colorado is trying to now, and this is the new precedent embedded in this, is Colorado has the right to impose their choices of candidate over the public. So if you don't vote for who the state says is
It's an
eligible,
official candidate.
then you don't have a valid vote,
All right.
and then you eliminate your vote, which is nullification.
I don't give a shit about Colorado right now.
Well,
Talking about
it's
Maine.
short. Same
Talking about
thing.
Maine.
Maine.
I
Same
got a
thing.
headache that's killing me. I just want to try and figure this one thing out so it doesn't drive me crazy. If you take somebody off the ballot
Yeah.
and you say, okay, now there's only Biden's on the ballot, you don't give somebody the other option to vote for somebody else. All the people who are going to vote for Trump that don't have somebody to vote for now, where do they put their vote? What do they vote for?
They don't.
They just don't cast a vote at all.
They vote, and it's not considered
Maine still
valid.
allows for write-in votes, so they could write in Donald Trump.
In Maine,
right.
not in Colorado.
Right. So say Maine that you have all of these people write in Donald Trump. The electors, without having Trump on the ballot, and even if Trump didn't have that, have the plurality of votes to win the 3 versus the 2, you could still have the 2 electors that voted for Trump the last election come in and vote for Trump this time. So he would still get the 2 electoral votes.
Yes.
The Secretary of State can't stop the electors. Has no power over the electors. She may be able to screw around with the ballot, but the electors can come in and say, go pound sand. We're putting these 2 votes down for Trump.
Which is why I'm bringing up Colorado. If it is possible, if it is considered, and it depends on the wording state by state, but if it is possible for the state to superimpose their will over the public and say, you can't vote that way because it's not approved. And this is the second part. This is a critical part, because this is about write-in ballots. It's about the voice of the public. Because Colorado has now made that, the Supreme Court of Colorado has made that a precedent, a fact, because they have included it in their decision. That means that now exists. That is a reality until it is overturned. Other states can look at that precedent and interpret their state laws to mean the same thing. And I guarantee you that you can see, even in Maine, that if people did write in Trump and Trump did get whatever number of electors, they can turn around and go, well, we have the same ruling like Colorado. It was never valid in the first place. Those don't count. Wipe them out. That's why that is important to also address. They are nullifying votes.
I think something to address too is the fact of, we're talking about Maine mostly here, yes, but story came out today that Trump is back on the Colorado ballot. Something to do with the fear that the United States Supreme Court is going to overturn it.
No. Here was the condition on that. Okay. And yes, Trump is back on the Colorado ballot. The reason why he's back on the Colorado ballot is because the Republican Party in Colorado has appealed the decision of the state Supreme Court to the Supreme Court of the United States. And the injunction that was put on the decision by the state Supreme Court was for that reason, and that would remain in effect as long as there was a challenge remaining towards the Supreme Court, which would then keep Trump on the ballot until there was a ruling made by the court.
When does the Supreme Court in Colorado get arrested for tampering with an election? Because this is the most blatant. This is even more blatant than 2020. This is the most blatant attempt to steal an election that has ever been conducted on American soil.
Well, we have to go back to, even prior to the state Supreme Court, the Colorado State Supreme Court's decision, we have to go to the decision that was prior to that. And that was the original decision where they tried to keep Trump off the ballot. And that judge ruled that, quote unquote, it is undeniable that Trump participated in insurrection. However, I am not removing him from the ballot because the 14th Amendment doesn't say anything about the president.
It was a trap.
Okay. And the ruling that the state Supreme Court and their quote unquote pseudo shield is they are going along with the ruling from the lower court that Trump, quote unquote, obviously participated in insurrection. So the Supreme Court's not saying anything about that because the only thing that was actually appealed was the decision on whether or not to keep Trump on or off the ballot.
Which de facto creates a precedent that he is an insurrectionist because a court has claimed he is, which is invalid.
All I am curious about at this point is, as insane as this world is getting, do the people who keep creating this insanity ever sit and think to themselves, we keep poking this friggin' bear. One day this bear is going to wake up and this bear is going to start poking back.
They think they'll win.
They are messing with things that they should really not be. I beg these people sometimes, you really need to stop and rethink what you're doing, because there are people on this soil, on American soil, who are clamoring. They're wringing their hands together, waiting for somebody to put the call out. To say, hey, enough is enough. These people have got to stop.
Yeah, but Frank, the echo chambers that the left often find themselves in have 2 points on that. One, they think that because of the suppression that has gone on, they think that the number of people who would actually fight against this are absolutely infinitesimal, that they're small numbers and therefore easily beaten because they don't see the true scope, because that is hidden from everyone. It's been suppressed to death. So they think there's
until Twitter started allowing more of it to show up.
Yeah. And now they're suddenly like, wait a minute, there's more voices. This can't be real. It must be bots.
That's one of the reasons why the left is so outraged at what Musk has done with Twitter.
Well,
it gives a voice to those people. There's a second part to this. They think they'll win because they think
I don't know how. I don't know how they think they could possibly.
They're on the right side. They believe they are on the right side of history. They believe the majority of people will be silent and not involved. And they think they outnumber.
There doesn't need
all you have to do,
be
all
a
you have to do,
majority.
all you
There
have to
doesn't.
do, Frank, all you have to do is go back to Eric Swalwell's comment when he was pushing for more gun control. And people were using the argument that gun control that the Second Amendment was designed to keep a tyrannical government in check. And Swalwell simply said, you think you're going to stand up against the USA when it has nukes?
Well, Biden said the same thing with, we've got F-16s.
Yeah.
Well,
how
the
do you?
F-16s, the
let-
nukes
let me-
didn't work in Afghanistan.
All right, let me
So they
explain to you.
think that the entire military is going to stay and stand with them.
Mhm.
They think a lot of things. They think a lot of things. They think a lot of things. They don't think about where they're going to be.
Okay.
If they
And it should have
they
been
can
a huge
try to
wake-up
convince,
call
if they can
when
try
they
to
had
convince,
to discharge so many people from the military for not taking the mandated shot.
well, listen, if they could think that a guy in a fur hat with horns on it could overtake the United States by himself with a couple of grandmothers and grandfathers walking around with cameras, I hate to think. Like I said, I travel in some weird circles. I know some pretty weird people. You guys know them too. Maybe not the same people, but guys, men and women cut from the same cloth, who've chewed the same dirt, who know the same things. They're pushing the wrong buttons for the wrong people. And at one point or another, I'm telling you right now, November next year comes around. You see shenanigans like we did last time. It's
You
done.
will. No. One, you're going to see more. All of the election laws that were in question in 2020, many of them resolved, but there are still issues. There's still many questions about mail-in ballots. Remember, just this year, 2023, we had the revelation of Bridgeport, Connecticut, where the Board of Elections, the Democratic representative to the Board of Elections, a 20-year employee, senior management, was stuffing mailboxes and instructing her staff to count as valid invalid mail-in ballots. That is a court case. There has been testimony that has been shown. This is a fact. It's not anyone's
There was
guess.
actually multiple elections this year,
Yeah,
that were overturned because of irregularities in the voting process.
Yeah, and you think that maybe they're going to start setting the stage for a look back at some of the things that took place in previous years and see what happens, or as a preventative measure for what may come in the future. But all I can tell you is this: if what happened in 2020 happens in 2024, the United States is over.
but they're going. No, it's not going to be over. We're going to see some degree. I don't know how much. We will see some degree of the same issues in terms of mail-in ballots, in terms of machines not working properly. Literally, some of them have been turned off. There are some other irregularities that happened in 2022. We saw this in Arizona, widespread. As an example, again, fact. This is not an opinion. It's not a guess. We are going to see these issues because they happen in every election. You're going to see it happen. Now the question is the magnitude and in which states it happens in. But because the left, and as you get further and further to the left, the more and more they believe that even if this happens, there will be zero pushback because they believe, correctly or incorrectly, that the news media is only reporting what they want. They're going to, anyone who mentions any of these things, they're going to be silenced instantly, just like they did in 2020. You're going to be removed from the social media. You'll be deleted almost instantly for daring to question what we then 2 years later find out, oh yeah, this was factually correct. There were factual issues. There have been court cases that have found that this was unconstitutional or invalid.
And
I'm not-
actually, it's
I'm not talking about any of that, Mike. I'm talking about if things go the way they did the last time, when people in this country feel that once again their voice was silenced, an election is stolen, their choices have been undermined, the government has taken away every sense of freedom that they have. It's not going to be a matter of what the media can do.
No,
It's not
40%.
gonna be a matter of what the politicians can do.
It's not going to do it because the majority of people are going to keep their heads down.
It doesn't need a matter. It doesn't need a majority of people. 3%.
I understand. I understand your point.
3%, and there's 535 people causing the problems.
I understand. I understand your position, but I can tell you what the political ideology or the political talk, backroom, all the sources that I have over the last 20 years, left, right, and center, all say the same thing. It will be ugly. It will be bad. There's going to be a backlash, regardless of who wins. There's going to be a backlash, larger if it's Biden
regardless
than
of
if
who
it's
wins,
Trump.
I guarantee that there will be questions about this election.
Absolutely. There's going to be forever. Going forward, we have degraded the American election system and the faith in our election system
Because
to the point that we are no better than
the last
I think the questions are all going to have to be asked after the dust settles and the smoke clears and the fires get put out, and after the bodies get buried, because there's not going to be anything that's going to hold anything else together after that. They're only going to be able to screw. This is America. This is a country that was founded on rebellion, and there's only so much that the people in this country are going to tolerate before they go too far. And they're going too far because they haven't felt the bear bite back yet. And when the bear decides it wants to bite back, it's not going to be a calling. It's not going to be we're waiting for the signal. It's going to be something that's just spontaneous. And when it begins, it's not going to stop until it's over.
They don't believe it. They don't believe that. The news media doesn't believe
They don't believe it. They don't believe it.
The establishment don't believe it.
But when it happens, remember, they're the ones who started it. They could have stopped it and let Americans have their voice. Let Americans have the government that we want to elect. Let our laws stand. Let our judiciary do its job according to the Constitution. When we run the country the way that the founders wrote it to be run, it would be fine. But they're undermining our country. They're turning it into something that it wasn't meant to be turned into. And the children of rebellion are going to eventually have to have their say. And it ain't going to be pretty when they do. And with that, I'm leaving because I've been inhaling varnish and stain all friggin' day. Just to clue you in, I'm building a new studio in the other side of the house. I'm getting evicted out of my side of the office here because Lori's business is growing. And now apparently my 2 desks here in the alcove are taking up space. So I'm being evicted and I'm being sent into another part of the house. So I have to build my new studio in there. So I've been assembling cabinets and staining stuff. So I have something that looks like a professional backdrop. Hopefully it'll be done by next week. But and next week is the yearly roundup.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to do a recap on that.
And we have to do it next week because the week after I will not be on the show because I will be in Rochester, New York for training.
The
never-ending training in New York.
Finally going to get the wheels off the bicycle.
Yep.
Good for you. All right, listen.
I got more certifications I've got to get.
Well, next week is next year.
It is.
Next week is next year. So I hope that all of you come back looking younger, healthier, a little bit thinner. Except for you, Jane. You don't need to lose weight. Us 3 fat bastards. But I will see you guys next week. And that's it. So be well. Love you guys. Have a happy New Year and all the rest of that good stuff. And be safe and shoot straight.
You take care, Frank.
All right, kids. Have a good night. Love you too.
Yeah, Dal. We'd love to have you on anytime you want to come on. Dal, just let us know and we will happily get you on. So I want to go back a little bit because we did get off on a tangent after we started talking about Trump being not eligible to be in the election. And I say that he is eligible because due process has not been adequate enough to prove his involvement in insurrection. And if they want to hold the standard that they're holding Trump to in order to disqualify him from holding office, then we need to do that equally across the board. And the first one that we need to go after is Kamala Harris, who is the current sitting vice president, who funded bail for people that were attacking government buildings, actually committing acts of insurrection, encouraging those people to continue their attacks. We need to go after Rashid Tlaib as well for the same reasons. We need to go after AOC, Ilhan Omar,
Maxine Waters,
Ariana Presley, and many others as well. Because given the standard that is being set for Donald Trump, these people are also guilty of participating in insurrection, and as a result, they are ineligible to hold office.
That's an interesting argument that no one's making. I don't think it's an invalid argument. I think it has as much validity, but no one's going to, even for those who agree with it, there is a wave of suppression that we are going to see continue to grow, I think, as we get closer to the election, that will suppress the hell of this. They will block anyone making that case because it invites questions, and they're trying to fortify the 2024 election.
I've raised this question multiple times on X, and every time I've raised it, it's been blocked.
Yeah, they are, even with X, all the social media are to some degree.
X is the one that's blocking it. The original poster's blocking it. Because what will end up happening is wherever I commented that, if I've commented it as a comment to another comment, that comment all of a sudden disappears. If I've commented on a post, the post disappears.
Yeah, they do not want this question raised because the establishment, this isn't even a left or right thing. This is an establishment thing. The establishment want to maintain power, and they don't want anyone who will not fortify. And when I say fortify, I mean like in what we saw with the Shadow Cabal, as highlighted by Newsweek, the Shadow Cabal of 2020. They are going to make sure people pick, and this is why it's so important what's happening with Maine and Colorado, that people go straight down the line and do not deviate. You have two choices, maybe, and you can't pick anything else. You can't go and pick RFK Jr. because he's an independent. That's outside the lines. You can't go to the Libertarian Party. You can't go to the Green Party. You can't write in anything. You don't get that choice. By the way, I consider this dehumanizing. Humans get to make choices. Humans have agency in their life. We are hearing from the government consistently in Colorado, now in Maine, and being considered in places like California, where Greg Newsom says, Gavin Newsom says, don't do it. They're saying you aren't human because humans get choices and have they have they can take action, and you don't have actions. You have the limitations. You're not human. That's
Well,
what they're
that's
saying
something
to
I
us.
wanted to bring up, being we're talking elections and everything now. Did you guys see there was a post I saw, it's either yesterday or the day before, coming out of California. Did you know that if you register yourself to vote right now in California, when you fill out your paperwork, you only have two choices, I believe it is. You can either register as a Democrat or you can register as an independent. Then as you're reading the form, you have to go online to register as a Republican.
Yeah. They want to make it difficult. They want to, again, whittle down the choices. Agency, that's what I was looking at. They want to take away agency, which is a function of freedom. And I strongly believe this. This is part of what fortifying elections is. We see this in other parts of the world consistently. We've seen it throughout the third world. We talk about it all the time, about their election systems. It is, the fortification is a reinforcement and a guarantee you're not human. You have no agency. You are merely a function of the existing government.
You're incapable of making your own choices.
Right. And remember,
I want to
all
circle back just a little bit.
okay.
Okay.
Well, let me
And I
finish,
want to go back to
let me
Maine.
finish one thought. Let me finish this thought. And what we see in these other nations is they don't have constitutions that reaffirm they're an individual and they have freedom, so they can get away with it. In the United States, the Constitution says exactly the opposite, which is why they are trying to whittle that away. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Getting back to what Frank was bringing up about Maine. I forgot Maine is a ranked choice voting state. So keeping Trump off the ballot in Maine is very detrimental.
Yeah.
Because you can't even do a write-in. You are given a selection of the candidates that are eligible to be on the ballot, quote unquote, eligible to be on the ballot. And then you must make your choices from those. And you rank your first choice, your second choice, your third choice, your fourth choice, your fifth choice. I think they go up down to 5. Okay, as to who you want. All right, no, actually, you rank each of the candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what's been going on, and this is what happened in Maine. This is also what happened up in Alaska. And I think those are the only 2 right now that have ranked choice voting. People have only been ranking their first and second choices. They haven't been ranking all of their choices.
So the first 2 votes get thrown out. That's what happened in Alaska. The first 2 rounds, the choice wasn't selected. They had no third or fourth option. The few people who did pick a third or fourth option are the ones who wound up winning. A lot of people had their vote nullified because they didn't realize they had to keep choosing.
And that's also the same thing that happened in Maine. Is a lot of people didn't rank every candidate. They only ranked 1 or 2. And typically what they end up doing is they only rank the candidates of their party. So if you have, if you only have 1 Republican on there, they only rank 1 person. If they have 3 Democrats on there on the ballot, they'll rank all 3, but they won't rank their 4th choice as a Republican. Okay. And if a choice hasn't been selected or ranked, it doesn't count in the ongoing rounds.
Yeah. There's a lot of problems with ranked choice voting.
Oh, there's huge problems with it.
Massive. I think it's a bad idea, and it adds way too much confusion into the system. My own personal view, but one of the worst things, any system that for America, if you want to tell me that Uganda or Chile or I don't know, Slovakia, they may have different systems. I don't care, because they don't have the freedom to make the choices we make here in America. That's a fact. That's not against any nation. The fact is, no other nation has or is supposed to have as much freedom as here in the United States. And to have the government in any way try to say they get to choose who's a candidate as opposed to me deciding myself who's a candidate, I oppose completely. The government has no right, other than what is in the Constitution, if the person is qualified per the Constitution to run for an elected office, I have the right to vote for that person. Full stop, done. There is no other body that should have the right. And this is insidious because when they do this, whether it's ranked choice voting or preventing write-ins, they dehumanize us and they shrink America. They are literally dragging us down to the status of a third world nation. And I don't think most people have ever thought of it that way, but that is exactly what is happening.
Well, it is. Okay. And ranked choice voting is in my opinion, one of the worst voting systems there is. Okay, because it doesn't give people the real choice. They may think they're getting more choices, but it doesn't. It does not adequately or accurately reflect the voice of the people.
Well,
And
people
we've
I know
seen
that
that play out in Maine. We've seen that play out in Alaska. And we've got other states that are going to be adopting ranked choice voting, if I'm not mistaken, in the 2024 election.
I know it's been
I think
proposed.
there's like 5 or 9 more states that are going to be adopting.
Yeah, they keep trying to get it here. I know people that live in Maine and Alaska, and they said that that's ranked choice is one of the worst things they ever came out with. They, especially because they didn't explain it well enough to the voters. And then in both elections, you had people that neither party really wanted to win.
Well, that's exactly what's happened. Okay. In the state of Alaska, the two front runners of the election on both the first 2 rounds would have one on one round would have won, the other one on the other round would have won. However, it went to the third round because neither one of those two had a clear majority of votes. So when it went to round 3, a person that wasn't in the front running is one that ended up getting elected.
You know what I notice about this? In terms of the ranked choice voting, every state that has ranked choice voting or is considering it happens to also be a blue state.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know libertarians are also in favor of it because it gives them opportunity to get on a ballot that they have been denied otherwise. So it's an opening for third parties, and third parties think, well,
that's the big argument for ranked choice voting.
Yeah,
is it gives third parties an opportunity.
Right. And I understand their argument that, they may be choice 4 or 5. Great, but they're on there. Their guy has a shot, even if it's statistically very small. But that does happen, which is the example of Alaska in particular, where that third, fourth, fifth option could win. But I think it takes away, it adds a layer of confusion. It allows for manipulation. It allows for basically abuse. And it, most importantly, denies the public that very important voice, that write-in voice, that's a statement. And I know a lot of Republicans hate it when I talk about third party and write-in. But here's the thing. That's a statement that says you failed to the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, to the Libertarian Party, Conservative, Green Party. I don't care what party you're in. That write-in ballot is your right to signal the country's going in the wrong direction. Everybody above is wrong, whether it's because of the establishment or whatever reason. They're wrong. This isn't where I want to go. This is one of the most direct and immediate ways to say the country must change. And that voice, which is being nullified, it may well be growing. There may be, I don't know, it could be 10%, it could be 20% of the nation that believes that. And those voices have been snuffed out. Those are people who no longer exist. And that's because when I say that, I mean, your voice is your vote. If you don't vote, you might as well not exist, because in terms of politics, because you're not relevant. You're non-existent politically because you didn't vote, no matter what that vote is. And if you say your vote doesn't count for an arbitrary reason because we don't like the choice you made, you're telling me that I'm non-existent.
Mm-hmm. And
does that make sense?
Here's my thing on elections, and I've stated this opinion before. I believe that if you are eligible to be on a ballot and you choose to be on a ballot, then you should appear on that ballot, regardless. Okay. I don't agree with primary systems because primary systems are designed to keep these restricted to two parties. Okay. I believe that if a party wants to hold a primary to select their best candidate to put forward, then that's fine. Do what you want to do. Okay. But it should be not under the expense of the state election commission. It should be under the expense of the party. The party should pay for it. There should not be any funding for it or anything else outside of the party that is holding that primary. Number one. Number two, like I said, anybody that wants to be on a ballot that is eligible to be on that ballot should appear on that ballot, regardless. Regardless whether they want a primary or not.
You need to define what eligible is, though, because today's eligibility is money. That's how you're eligible. It's the money. Define what your eligibility is.
Eligibility has been determined in the Constitution. Okay. Eligibility is set in the state constitutions. Eligibility for local offices are set by the municipal charters. Okay. Eligibility is there. Okay. Every charter constitution has eligibility requirements for various offices, elected offices.
It should be very sparse. It should be real simple. Age, citizenship. Are you old enough to be able to comprehend and have enough experience, life experience, to be qualified for the position? Are you an American citizen? That's it. Those are primarily, I don't really see any other need.
And you can have residency requirements.
Well, okay. Residency. Fantastic. We've got three requirements. You're a resident, so you're connected to that region, that area that you're running for, that you are of an age that you would have enough life experience, not necessarily education, not necessarily any perk or title, but just life experience to run. So you have something to reflect on, because the kid at 18 has no idea how anything works. Someone who's 25, 30, 40, 45, whatever the number is, do. And American citizenship. If you're from another country, I don't care how your country ran. You're in America. Only Americans should
Well,
vote in American elections.
I think we do have some people that are in office that we need to kind of look at that though too, though, boss, because we've got people up there and that have been voted into office and support terrorists.
You're talking about Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and their statements, like what we've seen most recently since October 7th. Rashida Tlaib supporting and promoting the anti-Semitic statement from the river to the sea, which is universally understood is anti-Semitic. It is it's meant to promote terrorism. I think you're speaking about that. That's one example. But as a naturalized citizen, she did qualify. But I think, and this is where voters need to step up and be responsible. They should vote her out of office because she has repeatedly made anti-Semitic statements. So has Ilhan Omar, because their focus has not been in supporting the Constitution, but in finding ways to change it or to remove it by their own statements. This is what they have said in their various statements, trying to remove the Second Amendment, to create new rights that don't exist. So I think that's where the voters need to step up. And actually, I don't think the requirement's wrong. I think that the voters didn't do their job. It's kind of like with George Santos. George Santos should still be a member of Congress. I said this before. The voters didn't do their job. The parties didn't do their job. The news media didn't do their job. No one looked at his background.
I agree that Santos should still be in office. Okay, I don't think that they had the grounds to remove him from office. He didn't violate any laws.
No, and therefore he should still be in. It's not his fault that everyone involved, every check and balance that was supposed to be done wasn't done.
And I think Santos should still, number one, I think Santos should still be in office. And if people reelected him, he should stay in office.
Yeah, because none of the eligibility requirements,
regardless of what he said on the campaign trail,
doesn't matter.
Okay, whether it's true or not. And I guarantee every candidate on the campaign trail lies.
But that also goes
to remove somebody from office for lying. Biden needs to be the first one to go.
Well, there are many, but to go to Jan, your point, in the same way, I wouldn't remove George Santos, even though he is, in fact, there is no question, he has been shown to be a liar. That is a fact. And that does not invalidate him as a candidate. The same thing in terms of the anti-Semitism of Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar. It does not invalidate them.
I totally understand your point because you're going off the references they're already in office. I agree with that. But I bet you if you go back and look at when they were running for office, they made statements. There had to be stuff in the background that somebody looked in the background.
Oh, there was
well, the thing is,
that's
each one of the people that you've mentioned
with the standards of
each one of the people that you've mentioned has been reelected.
Yeah, I know. Which it's mind-boggling. It is.
Okay,
I mean,
so
how many times
it was their constituents' choice to reelect them.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that because that's the choice. I would prefer people to not elect known anti-Semites, individuals that want to destroy America, that want to destroy the Constitution, take away all rights that Americans have, and put the government in charge of every part of their lives to micromanage your life, which is what the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, the Antifa, the far left, this is what they want. They've said so. It's quoted in international credible news agencies. This isn't something I feel. That's a fact. But the Constitution allows them to exist. Therefore, I have no problem with them running or winning. I have a problem when I'm told there's nobody who can compete with them because they don't like the choice that's competing.
Is our election process is broke. Okay. Point blank, it's broke. And became broke when it literally came down to where we had a choice between red or blue.
Well, that's a long time ago. That's
Okay.
a really long time ago.
Right. And that's when it got broke. When
That's
it,
what I was going to
when
say.
it
I
became
remember a time as a
a
kid
choice of
voting.
red or blue, and those were the only ones allowed on the ballots, then we started having a lot of issues.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember when I first started voting, you had a list of people to pick from. And then that slowly diminished until you got your two parties.
Well, it's because we've seen more of the establishment being in control, and we've seen more and more they are indoctrinating. Look, they took away civics from high schools. They stopped teaching kids the Constitution. They stopped teaching them cursive so they can't read the Constitution. And they have to go online to read the interpretation of the Constitution, not the actual words, not the actual document, but what they're being told, like they often do with the Second Amendment. Greatest example of that, where we have a whole generation of kids who've been taught that the Second Amendment is about hunting and recreation and not the defense against the government as well as any other threat, which is fundamental to what those words actually say. And so this is dehumanizing.
Even prior to them stopping teaching the Constitution, they stopped teaching the history behind the Constitution.
Oh yeah, Federalist Papers.
Okay. And that's one of the big problems right now that we have primarily in the United States is they haven't taught the history about what led to the Constitution, why we have a Constitution, what's led to a lot of these amendments. They haven't taught that.
Well, I think it's worse because, Mike, when they do bring these things up, it's been recontextualized and rewritten to benefit a political ideology. Again, that brings us back to our conversation about what we've been hearing about slavery, what we're hearing about the Civil War. They've recontextualized it. Oh, no, of course, it was always about slavery. And of course, it was, this is a democratic ideal. No, the Democrats were in favor of slavery.
Even now, with this Section 3 of the 14th Amendment.
Yeah. Also,
okay. They are saying, well, that was brought in due to the Reconstruction to keep people that were part of the Confederacy off the ballot.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's true to an extent. But they still had to follow due process in order to keep them off the ballot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still essential to prove guilt.
That's the whole thing. They had to prove that they were XYZ. Okay. And there's various levels of proof on this. Now, one of the first things is in order to keep an active Confederate off of the ballot, the first thing they had to prove was that they had swore an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States first. If they failed that, then they were eligible to be on the ballot. Okay, regardless of what their position was in the Confederacy. Okay, so really, it was only a very small fraction of people that fought in the Civil War that would have been ineligible under this article, under this amendment.
Yeah, but the point isn't how many. And I think that's that's one of the distractions I think that we see coming from the left is they're trying to use numbers and amounts to try and distract from the purpose.
Well, they're trying to make everyone believe that the entirety of the Confederacy was ineligible.
Right, which is absolutely a lie. That's not true. Again, they've distorted the history, the fact, and recontextualized it to match their
What?
partisan politics.
Well, here's another point that I want to make. If that were the case, if the entirety of the Confederacy was ineligible to be elected to office or to hold office, then there would have been no representatives from any of the southern states.
Slaves, freed slaves, maybe. Because there were the first black members of Congress, again, also thrown out the window by all of the left. They were all black.
Right.
The Reconstruction era, they were all black. And as opposed to what many would like to imagine them as, they weren't all just puppets. These were intelligent individuals.
Oh, yeah, they were.
They weren't just,
Okay.
you know.
In
John
fact,
Smith,
some of
you're
the first black representatives and senators were firebrands.
Yeah.
Okay. They pushed through some heavy legislation.
Yeah, they weren't puppets. They weren't just gimmies and parrots, which we often hear if you listen to the more leftist position on this, the one that's in our schools when they bother to talk about this is, well, yeah, but they didn't count because they weren't real. Yes, they were. They happened to be Republicans. They were effective. They were credible more often than not. And they did enact legislation that was important.
Yeah.
But again, that goes against
many of them were responsible for many of the early civil rights laws.
Yeah. But that gets discounted because that doesn't go with, well, Democrats are for black people have to vote Democrat because, you know, they say so, which is insulting. Again, dehumanizing. You're black, you're a minority, then you must be Democrat. Why? Because. Why?
Well, it's the same. It's the same with the LGBTQ community right now too.
Yeah. How dare you be?
Don't vote for me. You ain't black.
No. Well, same thing. I've heard people that I know in LGB, and they say, "Oh no, the same kind of wording that they use for black people. Well, what do you mean you're not a Democrat? How can you not be a Democrat? Don't you hate? Do you hate yourself?" And I've heard the same kind of language used against those who are LGB, who happen to be conservative and Republican or libertarian, and they tell them the same thing. Oh, how? What? You hate being gay? You're gay. You're a lesbian. Don't you hate yourself? You have to be Democrat. Wait a minute. Why?
Well, there are some conservative trans out there too.
Oh yeah, them too.
Okay,
and
they're getting railed even worse than conservative gay, blacks, or lesbians.
Yeah,
they are getting absolutely hammered, and the trans that are against trans people competing in sports are getting hammered too.
Or having kids under non-adults begin the medical procedures. Right. There's a large number of, and I've been in several forums of the trans forums where they're discussing this. It is a huge issue, and there's a large number of what they're saying in the forums I've been in. And they're saying that there's a huge movement throughout the trans movement to say, no, not anyone under 18. No, you're a child. No, figure out your life first. Do not just start doing this willy-nilly. This is a bad thing. Again, all of these things, though, are what I believe is dehumanizing, and it is a systemic way of destroying our society and destroying the Constitution. It is reducing America from the pinnacle of freedom to just being another country. This is the ultimate consequence of socialism and progressivism, is that you are not an individual or important or valuable. You're just a replaceable commodity. You are no different than anyone and anything else. You have no value because there is no value because there is no individual. You're just a category and you only have the
Unless
value
you're
of
an
that
elite.
category.
Okay. I've brought this up before. You guys know about the Freedom Index, right?
Do you, Jen?
Okay.
I've heard of it.
It's a ranking of how free a country is.
Based on
And
some iffy criteria.
right. Okay. The United States has lost ground on the Freedom Index for the last few decades.
Yeah. Are we somewhere around 27, I thought, last I saw it, if I remember correctly?
Okay. Let me see. I'm scrolling down to. So right now, the United States
has.
Okay. This doesn't give a ranking by order, the one I'm looking at right now. Let's do the Cato Institute has it.
Does Cato? Okay. Cato's usually good.
I think one of the biggest things when it comes to this subject, I always go back to something that was said to me during the Cold War when we were kids. What's the difference between us and Russia? The answer was, we think we're free.
Okay.
Okay, so here we go.
There we go.
Let me share this.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14.
Okay, so
15,
here's the Freedom
16.
Index. Okay, so the top 10 places in order: Switzerland, New Zealand, Denmark, Ireland, Estonia, Estonia and Sweden are tied at 5. Iceland, Luxembourg, Finland, and Norway. Selected jurisdictions rank as follows: Taiwan is 12th, Canada is 13th, Japan 16th,
US
the
17.
United Kingdom and the United States are tied at 17th.
Yeah.
Germany's 21st, Chile's 26th, South Korea's 28th, France 39, Brazil and South America tied at 73, Argentina 77, Ukraine 83, Mexico 95, India 109, Nigeria 118, Russia 121, Turkey 128, China 149, Saudi Arabia 157, Venezuela 160, Iran 161, and Syria 165.
China has a higher freedom index than Venezuela, the place that Bernie Sanders wanted the United States in 2016. He wanted the United States to mirror Venezuela's government. They are ranked lower than China, the Chinese government that regularly disappears entire groups of people, including the Uyghurs, including the Hong Kong government. So because of politics or religion, you may disappear. They starve their people on a regular basis. They weld their people into apartments to starve to death, and they have a higher ranking than Venezuela. Ukraine is incredibly low, and yet we're defending them. This is the insanity. And this is also why I think the rankings, part of the reason, the way they do the rankings, I don't necessarily agree with, because it seems kind of fugazi the way they put that together.
Now, the United States gets a score of 83 out of 100.
Mhm.
On political rights, it gets 33 out of 40. On civil liberties, 50 out of 60. Okay. Overview. The United States is a federal republic whose people benefit from a vibrant political system, a strong rule of law tradition, robust freedoms of expression and religious belief, and a wide array of other civil liberties. However, in recent years, its democratic institutions have suffered erosion, as reflected in rising political polarization and extremism, partisan pressure on the electoral process, bias and dysfunction in the criminal justice system, harmful policies on immigration and asylum seekers, and growing disparities in wealth, economic opportunity, and political influence.
Well, those last couple are policies about immigration, which has nothing to do with freedom, and our policies about economics, which have nothing to do with freedom.
I do believe economics do have
Mm,
something to do with freedom.
Well, here's the thing, because if you have a system that is free and you're poor, that doesn't mean the system didn't work.
Right.
So when they equate wealth with freedom, they imply, sometimes implicitly and usually explicitly, that because you're poor, that means you're not free. That's not true. That is explicitly not true. But that is the implication they push to then rank you and say, well, too many of your people are poor. And again, let's also understand the concept. Poor in America is rich in every other part of the world. You make $12,000 in America, abject poverty, 61% of the world wishes they could be that rich. So again, they're playing with some of these terms, and that's why I get upset about it. But go on.
Okay. And then it goes on to and talks about some of the things why we are at that level. Okay. And one of the things that it rates us on was current head of government or other chief national authority elected through free and fair elections. Gave us 3 out of 4. Okay. That is questionable considering a lot of the problems that were done on that. Also, I have another problem with, and they raise this here, where if a presidential candidate wins a state, all of the electoral votes for that state go to that person. I do not like that. I don't agree with that. Okay, I believe that the electoral votes should actually be proportioned according to the way the voters voted in a state.
Proportionate to however the general ballot went.
Right. There's only 2 electoral votes that shouldn't be done that way. All the rest of the votes, the electoral votes for a state should be done that way. And each of those electoral votes should be assigned to the congressional district. Which would mean that there would be 2 left over. Those 2 could be automatically assigned to whoever won the popular vote. But the ones that were actually assigned to congressional district, I think should go to the way that congressional district voted.
I get it. There are pros and cons to all of that. But again, I don't like the Freedom Index because you're ranking a bias. It is created with a bias. It has an ideal that doesn't exist, that isn't necessarily based in freedom. It's based on a more partisan idea of freedom, and it's pushing an agenda. and that therefore you're being ranked against that partisan agenda, which is why I don't like the Freedom Index, because it's not really determining what's free. There are issues, a lot of them, throughout all their criteria.
Okay. There's a lot of this index that I find very wrong. B, political pluralism and participation. B1. Do the people have the right to organize in different political parties or other competitive political groupings of their choice? And is the system free of undue obstacles to the rise and fall of these competing parties or groupings? They rank it a 4 out of 4 for the United States. I do not agree with that.
No, but
The highest I would say is a 2 out of 4.
yes, but that's their answer. Again, this is part of the partisanship. They're ranking it versus Angola or Chile.
Okay,
yeah,
because
we're way better
unless
than them.
you are Democrat or Republican, you really can't organize into a political party of your choice.
Talk to anyone in the Green Party. Talk to anyone in the Libertarian Party. Talk to the people who are in the rent's too damn high party. I mean, they exist, and we're told they don't. And again, Maine, Colorado, they're saying, even then, you still don't get a choice. They want to nullify your vote even then.
B2, okay, is there a realistic opportunity for the opposition to increase its support or gain power through elections? Okay, if you are a member of the Republican or Democratic Party, yes. If you are a part of any other party or independent, no. So that should be a 2 out of 4. Okay, so yeah, there's a lot of things that I have problems with on that ranking. And I think if we truly ranked it as it should be, and not as a comparison against other countries, but as a straight evaluation of a country without any comparison to any other country, then we would rank a lot lower.
Actually, I disagree with you, Mike. In this case, let me explain. America is ranked against freedom itself, not the partisan ideal, but the reality of freedom in the world. I think America is the best. We are overwhelmingly, even with all the problems, even with all the flaws, we are the best empirically, but we are far from where we have been in the past, and we are far from what true freedom, real freedom, the reality of freedom is in the world. We're far from what that is. I think there's such a huge gap. I mean, if you were to rank it on a scale of 0 to 100 in terms of freedom, what freedom can be in the real world, I think the United States starts the list, and we're probably somewhere around 70%. And every other country is under that bar. The bar is 70% with us. Then skip about a dozen spots to about 60. And probably the UK, a couple of other countries, maybe Sweden, maybe Switzerland, will start at about 60. And then every other country goes down after that. That is how wide the chasm is, both between the United States and its capabilities as it exists right this second, and the rest of the world, as well as compared to freedom, what the potential freedom has been as exemplified by our own country, using us as the benchmark of, okay, this is how good it can be because this is how good it has been. Jen, what do you think about that?
I see your point. I get where you're coming from. Because you do have to look at the point. Everybody looks to America.
Mm-hmm.
So how could we not be on the top of the list? I mean, yeah, we're nowhere near 100%. We're nowhere near 80%.
Well, I think they look at America of old.
I think they look at I think they look at America as is, and it's still better than everywhere else. I mean, as an example, you can pick any country in the world, literally any country in the world. Look at the import export, people who are giving up their citizenship to migrate legally, legal migrants into the United States, and how many people in the United States are legally migrating into country X. And I'm the qualifier here being you're giving up citizenship. How many people are giving up American citizenship? How many people are giving up that foreign national citizenship? And you will see in every single case to this day, right this second, there is no country in the world where Americans are willing to give up their citizenship to be a citizen of a foreign country, to give up being Americans to be anything else. Now, not to say there are no Americans doing that, there are. But when you look at any country in the world and you look at the people in that country, so again, I know I keep saying Uganda and Angola. Let's go with Chad, which is an African nation that most people don't even know where it is, don't even know that it exists. Chad. Let's use Chad, an African nation, Central Africa, and you look at how many people are coming from Chad to become Americans versus how many Americans go to become part of Chad. It is exponentially higher. They want to come to America than want to go to Chad. That number is reflected in every country in the world. That is a definition of freedom. That is a recognition that as screwed up as our system is, and it is, and as bad as it is becoming, and it is, at this moment, it's still the best in the world. But if progressives and socialists have their way, we will soon become the equivalent of a Chad rather than the pinnacle that everyone wants to become. In fact, I think that's how they would define success, is when we become just another country with all the same problems and failures that every other country has. Oh,
Guys, it's almost 11:30. I'm
is
gonna.
it? Oh yeah,
out.
yeah. It is about that time. It's been interesting. We get some interesting things in there. You're silent again, Mike. Why are you silent?
I'm looking up something.
Yeah, you love to be. My God, he's always silent.
Sorry.
He always forgets. No one can see what you're typing, Mike. What is it you're looking at?
I was just checking something real quick. It's not real important, but
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna finish you guys off online. I'll see you next week. Have a good week.
Okay.
Happy
You have a
New
great
Year.
night, Jan. Thank you for being on.
Yeah, it is about that time, Mike. I didn't realize it.
Yep,
I
it
just
is.
realized it.
Okay, so it is getting late, and I'm going to have to do more research into that. What I was looking into, I couldn't find the results right away. So, that being said, right now we are in a membership drive, and as you can see from our website, we are accepting people for membership. This is a paid membership, and the funds that you pay to become a member of the Liberty First Foundation help us to do what we do. Okay, whether it is to bring you content, to bring you information, to do this live stream, and other things. That's what these funds are being used for. Okay, doing what we do costs us quite a bit of money, and all that money has, for the most part, been coming out of pocket. So we are asking you for some help. Number one, to help us spread the word further than what we can do by ourselves. But number two, to help us move up to other levels of being able to fight for your freedom. We have multiple strategies that we are trying to implement. The problem is each one of those strategies costs money. And it's money that we do not have to be able to do those strategies adequately. So we would like for you guys to consider becoming a member of the Liberty First Foundation. And if you don't think we're your cup of tea, then find another constitutional promoting organization to support. Okay, because honestly, that's where our biggest problems lie, is we are getting further and further away from the Constitution. And if we get back to our foundational roots, then we can build a strong country again. So that being said, I want to thank Michael. He's here every week. Michael, why don't you give them a little rundown of your show and some of what you do?
Sure. Every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream reaching across all the internet that the internet overlords will allow to hear what everyone has to say about the issues affecting us all. Like, obviously, we're going to be talking this week more about what's happened with Maine, what's happened with Michigan, what happened with Colorado. But one of the differences, I'm also taking calls, messages, text, chat while I'm doing it live. So it's just me talking with everyone and showing you the sources about these things that have been happening all week and sometimes much further into the past. And we invite everyone. It's a pretty enjoyable event. Matter of fact, I would suggest you could go to watch, I don't know, The Marvels, a bomb. Aquaman 2, a bomb. You can go and see some propaganda, spend $30 a month, for 2 hours and have a miserable time. Or you can come and see me, like we are here on Liberty First Foundation, for free, or better yet, give us the membership and look, you'll get 5 times as much. You'll get 10, 20 hours, 30 hours of content, and it'll cost you like $1. I mean, it's worth it. Isn't it worth it to be more free? I don't know.
$1 a month.
Yeah. I mean, that
a little over $1 a month.
Yeah, or you could, spend $30 to be pissed off because Aquaman sucks. So did the Marvel.
Well, I watched the Godzilla King of the Monsters.
No, forget that. No.
Something that was supposed to be primarily a spin-off on the Japanese.
It's miserable.
Gargantuan movie or movies where you watched it to watch the carnage the monsters did.
No, and you got human drama instead. Look, you want to watch Godzilla? Go see Godzilla -1. There it is. You do not see Rebel Moon. I saw it. Oh my God, that's a miserable movie. It's not even a movie. It's like a part of a movie. It is so boring, so horrible, so woke. It is terrible. Really, Godzilla -1 is like the only thing I would recommend.
Getting that way in all of our media and pop culture. Okay. And I don't mind pop culture kind of following what's going on. But when they take it to the extreme that they are taking it and making it try to seem that everything is that way, then it's not.
It's not pop culture. This is politics. This is propaganda.
Okay. But beyond that.
Yeah.
So we are here every week, 9 p.m. Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern time every Friday night. We do encourage you to join in our chat and to join in the conversation. Dal, we would love to have you on the show. Anytime you want to be on, just let us know and we will definitely get you on. We love having you in the comments, but we'd love to talk to you face to face too and have you input some of your opinions and outlooks into our conversations as well. So just let us know, Dal, and we'll definitely get you on. That being said, we will see you all again next week. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you to all the people viewing. You have a great week.